that process. So those are all of my announcements. So now I get to introduce our speaker, and I'm so thrilled that Dr. Kelly Johnson accepted our invitation. In fact, there was an article about Kelly and her project in the Herald-Dispatch just before our last Tuesday talk, and I think it might have been Dr. Bird who said, can we get her here to talk? And so I emailed Kelly and I said, can I get you here to talk? And she said, very graciously said yes. Kelly is a librarian on campus, and she and I have been colleagues for a hot second. And Kelly is, she's just such an asset to Marshall. She is involved in so many things. She's the co-chair of the President's Commission on Diversity and Inclusion.
Equity and Inclusion.
Okay, I knew I was going to leave a word out because it's a long
thing.
But Kelly is smart and she's funny and she's just one of those people that when I see her on campus, I smile because she's just awesome. And when she finished her doctorate, I was so excited because I was like, now I can call you Dr. J. So, without further ado, I'm Dr. Kelly Johnson.
Thank you very much. Way to set the bar real high. Thanks very much. And I'm really excited to see faces that I know, and new faces too. So thank you all so much for inviting me here today. I really appreciate it. I'm just going to go over what I've been doing. Please stop me and ask questions at any time. If there's something that you wanted me to talk about that I'm not talking about, please, just let me know. And hopefully I can live up to Beth's introduction. One thing I do want to say before I forget is Beth was talking about the opportunity to audit classes. Thinking about some other free things that the state offers that might be of interest to you. One thing is through the West Virginia Library Commission, you have access to a lot of library databases. So research that you might want to do, or things like that, you can go to the West Virginia Library Commission website, and I can show you how to get there and also share that with Beth to go on to all of those databases. We use them a lot on campus for the students. They're really, really expensive, so it's really cool that the state of West Virginia pays for some of these things. So there's some cool stuff there, stuff that you can use, stuff you can share with your kids, your grandkids, great-grandkids if you have them. So, and all you need to do is go to the West Virginia Library Commission website. You do need to have a password, username and password. It's really, really tough to remember. West is the username. Virginia is the password. They made it really tricky for us, so yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, so West Virginia Library Commission. I thought I'd start off just giving you guys a little bit of my background. I'm not originally from here, so you might think, why did I, dive in and take on this history project? I'm originally from California. I've been in this area in August it'll be 22 years. My dad's from around here. I have a lot of family from around here. And I found myself 22 years ago, a single mom with 2 little girls in a big giant city. And I thought, I want something different. I want something new. So I moved here and I've been here ever since. Raised my kids here. Have a grandson now. He'll be 3 in June. So, I mean, it's kind of come full circle from my family being around here, my dad's side of the family, and now we're here and we're kind of keeping the family thing going here. I'm not a historian, I'm a librarian, so I'm more, I kind of came to this oral history project from the librarian side of things. Not necessarily to dig into history and do these kind of in-depth analyses of the history and what it means for us today. I just want to save it. I just want to save the history. That's up to everybody else what they do with it. I just want to keep hold of it. So that's why I decided to start this project. I started over this past summer. I got a West Virginia Humanities Council grant, and I recruited there were originally, I think, 12 kids, 14, 15 years old, 6 of them kind of carried through with the project. Interestingly enough, it was all the young women. The young men just kind of wandered off. I don't know what they were doing. But, and we trained them to do oral histories with their grandparents or other elders in the community. So that's where this whole thing started. We got some great interviews with some folks that you may know. Joe Williams, who was our mayor, Sylvia Ridgway, who's everywhere and does all the things, and some other really, really interesting folks. So I'm going to share some of that audio with you here in a little bit. But it shows, to me it shows that you don't have to be a trained historian to record your history and to save it. You don't need to be a librarian. You can be a kid. You can be a former professor at Marshall University. You can, whatever your background is, if you can talk, you can record an oral history. Or even if you can't talk, but if you get someone that can talk, you're fine. So that's where the project. That, you know, that's, yeah. Mine too sometimes, obviously. I just kind of, so that's where my project actually started. It's fitting and really cool that the father of Black history lived in Huntington for a while, Carter G. Woodson. He was actually born in Virginia, actual Virginia, not before we split off from Virginia. He came here to Huntington with his family. He wanted to go to school. And so Douglas High School was here. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Douglas High School was the high school for African Americans in town. He went there in, I want to say, 1895. And then 5 years later, he was the principal of Douglas High School. So that was pretty cool. You might have heard too that he went to Berea. He went to University of Chicago, and he was actually the second African American to get a PhD in history from Harvard. The first was Du Bois. Yeah. So it's pretty awesome that he has, that Carter G. Woodson's, I mean, there's still family here. It's pretty awesome. And so I think that's another thing that kind of pushed me to do this oral history project.
Where did you go to school, to college?
I went to Marshall. When I moved here, I was 30 and had gone a little bit here and a little bit there. I worked for the Forest Service for a while. I worked for, my kids loved it that, you know, that I worked for the Forest Service. They thought that was really, really cool. I worked in an office, though, in the city, so it wasn't really that cool. I worked for the city of San Francisco. I worked in the registrar of voters office. I've just done all kinds of things in my past. But when I got here and I was 30, I thought, let me finish that degree. Let me show my girls, you know, we can do it. So went back to school. My undergraduate degree is in recreation therapy, and that's the first time I had ever been to Woodlands. We did some outreach. And I think it was in this room, and we did like yoga and exercise and stuff. I came here a couple times, probably about 20 years ago. Still looks great here. I think it's bigger. I'm not really sure. It's been a while since I've been up here. So yeah, Marshall got that undergraduate degree in recreation therapy. Realized that there are no jobs around here in recreation therapy. I worked for a while in Coal Grove with Lawrence County Board of MRDD, so I worked with mentally retarded and developmentally disabled adults for quite some time. We did recreational activities. That was actually probably, next to being a librarian, the funnest job I've ever had. So I realized, you know, I can't make a living for my kids with that, so I went back to Marshall and got a master's degree in adult and technical education. Along this time, I just started working at the library full-time, so I didn't really do anything with those degrees other than training and having fun, and I just kind of stayed at the library. I had some awesome people that I worked with at Marshall and at the library who kind of said, hey, be a librarian, it's really cool. And I did, and it is, and I'm really excited about that. So I have a couple degrees from Marshall. And my librarian degree is from Texas Women's University. So which I've never been to Texas, but it was all online. In Denton, Texas, I've never ever been there, so.
I used
Maybe.
to fish.
Pardon
I
me?
used to fish in Denton, Texas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just outside of
Am I missing something by not being there?
North Texas State is there.
Oh,
Now
okay.
it's no longer called that. It's University of Texas, Florida, whatever, wonderful music school.
Another one of our librarians went there, Majid Cotter. He got his PhD there at Texas. So, yeah. And his daughter is now in Texas, getting her PhD in library science in North Texas, I want to say. So, yeah.
It's the same school.
And Tammy Johnson, our director of admissions at Marshall, coached volleyball at Texas.
I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Ask her.
she's the other Dr. Johnson. We like to call each other that, the other Dr. Johnson. It's awkward, sometimes we get emails for each other, so anyway. I didn't know that, I can't wait
Dolores
to
Johnson.
mention that too. So, I feel like I got after, okay, yeah, so that's my background. So a little bit about the oral history project. It kind of led me to do some other things. So one of the things that we have coming up is an African American genealogy workshop day. How many of you guys have done genealogy? Have traced stuff a little bit? Yeah. So it's not clear cut. It's not an easy road to go through this. Even with a lot of the things that we have online these days, it's just not. It's even more difficult when you're a person of color because the records were different or not there or, you know, what have you. So we thought, you know, we do some really great stuff around here between Marshall Library and Cabell County Library in terms of helping trace genealogy, but we need to kind of step it up if we want to trace African American genealogy. So we started with this African American Genealogy Day. I say that to show you what we've developed that could be of help to you if you decide genealogy is something that you'd like to go for. So on the Marshall page, you can go to the library page. It's actually marshall.edu/libraries. Or you can go about it the way that I just went to it. And over here under research, we have some research guides. You have to excuse me, I'm a little under the weather too. Okay. So we have research guides for a bunch of different things, so if you just have an interest in something and you want to see if we have any research guides for it, we probably do. We've got almost 100 of them. But I put together one on African American history, and this is actually a picture of the kids who did the oral history project. I'll show you those here too. But you notice that there's a tab here for African American genealogy. So here's, that's the workshop that's coming up on the 23rd. We're really, really excited about it. I think there might be spots left, and I'm sharing that with you to say, has anyone heard of Dr. Cicero Fain? Okay, so Dr. Fain is from Huntington, and his family's still here. He's actually at a school in Maryland right now. But his work, the things that he has done, his dissertation, his thesis, have to do with African Americans in Huntington. And his work is what I've used to set the foundation for what I've been doing. He also has a book coming out in March, I think, about African Americans in Huntington. And he's going to be speaking that day, so we're really excited about that. He's also going to be speaking in April at, I don't know, I should ask Fain for some money. I'm like plugging his stuff here. He'll be speaking at the Carter G. Woodson Foundation dinner, so that'll be really exciting too, and I know they're starting to sell tickets for that. But what I wanted to show you was the materials and resources that we put together, and I can't claim, it's kind of hard to see, but no. One of our, an assistant librarian put this together, so I can't claim that I had anything to do with this. That's why it looks so great and it's organized, because somebody else did it. But she put together a bunch of different things on here that could help you if you decide you want to dig into genealogy at all. So there's some definitions and resources there, some online forums that you can use, and websites specific to African American genealogy. But a lot of it, I mean, genealogy is genealogy, right? So just wanted to share that website with you, or that research guide. Let me go back to and show you the young women that worked on the oral history project over the summer. It was really exciting, and I apologize if I'm like kind of all over the place, but I just get so excited when I talk about it. It was interesting because the kids came in and they were, we were talking about the students. They were kind of like, my mom made me do this, or grandma made me do this. I mean, we did pay them a stipend, so I'm sure that had something to do with it too. But they were just kind of like, At the end of the project, they were bubbly and so excited because they got that really cool connection with their grandparent and learned a bunch of things that they didn't know. So at the final event, we had them stand up and talk about things, and it was amazing how much they learned, how much they grew, how excited they were. So hopefully it really started something, it really started a dialogue, and hopefully they'll keep it going. Show you a couple other pictures.
Where do they go to school?
Huntington High.
Huntington High?
Mm-hmm. At the final event, and Sylvia Ridgway, there she is right there. At the final event, we had a bunch of pictures out. Let me go back a little bit. I know I'm all over the place. So, does anyone know Sandra Clements? Okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, Sandra Clements and Dolores Johnson, who you might know as well, started a project probably 10 years ago. They thought, you know what, we need to record our history of the Fairfield neighborhood of Huntington. At one point, it was a thriving community with stores and a pharmacy, and there was a movie theater and bowling alley and skating rink and all kinds of stuff going on, and it's not that anymore if you've been through there lately. So they started this project where they were collecting photographs of the neighborhood. They wanted to put together a photo book. It didn't quite work out, and they both have since retired, and they donated all these pictures to the library. That's really how I got involved. So at the library, we had all of these pictures. We had no idea who the people were, where the pictures came. We didn't know anything about it. So if you know libraries at all, that drives us insane. We need to have all the background. So me said, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out where all the pictures go to. So I have hundreds of pictures that I'm trying to put names to the faces, places to the pictures, things like that. So I told Sandra, I said, you know what? I'm going to work with this. I'm going to help you with this. Let's try and figure out who these pictures are. And she said, great. And she gave me this giant plastic tub and said, here's our baby. It's your baby now. So this project started with Sandra and Dolores. And I'm trying to keep it going. And when I took a look and started talking to people and saw the rich history that we have in Fairfield, that just kept me going even further. So this picture shows all these pictures that I just scattered them on tables at this final event. We invited a bunch of people in. And people had so much fun with that. They're like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. Oh, I remember this place. So that was a lot of fun. We still trying to figure out who a lot of the people and places are, but it was kind of a fun activity to have. This is my cousin, Marcy Williams. She taught at Huntington High for years too. You might know her.
Where exactly is Fairfield? I'm fairly new, so I mean, I think I have a general idea, but what are the boundaries? What's the area?
That's a great question. Originally, it really was from 20th Street, 8th Avenue, 16th Street or Hal Greer, up to maybe about Dalton or 10th. There's also, we were talking, there's a Fairfield East and a Fairfield West. So Fairfield East is 20th down to about 28th, 8th Avenue up to, gosh, I don't even know where the marker would be there. But it just, to me, it depends on who you ask. Not being from here, I call it all Fairfield. And to me, it goes from about 28th down 8th Avenue, maybe on over to even 10th Street and up. You know, so it's
So
changed over time.
9th Avenue is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, let me see if I have, the maps I have are these old maps and they're not easy to see. I'd like to show those because it's, you know, what it originally was. I'll dig around here and find a map and then I can show it better instead of trying to find one of those old maps. But it really depends on who you talk to. And the year, because it kind of expanded. So some of the oral history, some of the people I talked to said, well, on our side of, it was Dave Harris is the one I'm thinking of his interview right now. So on 10th Avenue, I believe, on his side of the block, it was black people. On the other side, it was white people. So it's like the line went down the middle of the street, you know? So, yeah, it just depends on the year we're talking about and the person you're talking to.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
East,
I'm sorry,
the name Fairfield, where does it come from?
You know what? I'm glad you asked that because I don't know.
I
So I was going to
Charles-
ask you guys
I
if you
asked
knew.
Charles yesterday, you know, where does, and he said, well, Fairfield Stadium, and I said, okay, but what's Fairfield?
Yeah. Well, and I heard from somebody that they thought it was someone's name, but I don't not found anything to back that up. I don't think it was anyone's name. And I haven't been able to plug in exactly when it started being called Fairfield. So that's another thing I'm trying to track down. So,
I was just curious, the East and West Fairfield area, was that originally to do with segregation, and would a line maybe be drawn?
you know, you're saying yes? I think it might have been. I don't have anything documented. It's interesting though because my uncle, someone else you guys might have known, William Hort, he's still alive, he's 95. He lived in Fairfield East. And so he was talking about growing up and that there were only maybe 3 or 4 families in his area, which, I mean, it's really, what, 10 blocks away from Fairfield West. But that neighborhood east was predominantly white, and he was talking about a grocery store and things that they had right there in their neighborhood. And I said, well, was there any kind of difficulty? I mean, were you uncomfortable being a black family there? And he said, no, everything's fine. So, I don't know. I think yes,
Yeah, I think just from the 50s, that's what I recall. Yeah. Fairfield East was primarily black. Fairfield East was primarily black.
And I guess I technically live in Fairfield East. I live on Ann Street. It's just a tiny little 1 block that most people don't even know it's there. I didn't even know it was there until I was looking for a house and there it was. But so our neighborhood, it's mixed, about half and half, probably, black and white. So, were there other questions? Okay. So that's this picture. We're looking at pictures. Some folks at Mitzi Sinnott, who is a performance artist. She's originally from Kentucky. Her dad's from Huntington, and so she's been involved. She was one of the facilitators for that. She would be a great guest to have come up here. She is a lot of fun. We just had a kickoff for Black History Month, and she did part of her performance piece, which she's done around the world, and it's award-winning. And it has to do with her complicated relationship with her father, who was a Vietnam vet who had PTSD and a lot of psychological issues. He also was a black man from Huntington who married her white mom from Kentucky. It's fascinating. So just throwing that out there. And I will collect my money from her as well. I'm having a technology day today. Thought, let's see, probably up here. The one I put, here it is. This is what I was looking for. So again, from that, you all know this lady, Marie Red?
Yeah.
So she was one of the ones who was interviewed. It's fascinating. So what I did for a couple, and there's another one below here, but I took some of their quotes out from their oral histories, and I'm going to use those. So I've used them on this research guide, and I'm also putting together, hopefully, some type of book, and I'm going to take pieces from the oral histories quotes to help punctuate the chapters in the book. So that's exciting too. That's another thing you can do with oral histories. So Marie Red was talking about being after desegregation, and so her wanting to be on student council and wanting to be not a cheerleader but a majorette, maybe something like that. I don't remember. So it was really, really interesting. It's great to have kids can look at books. They're not really that excited about history these days, but when you hear it and you see it, it comes to life, and it's really, really exciting. So, Marie Red, and you might know this guy, Pastor Hill, and he was talking about the different community gathering places in Fairfield. So he was talking about A.D. Lewis Center, sometimes called the Boys Club, and the Scott Center, which is closed but should be reopened soon with something new and exciting happening there. So it was really cool to see the kids get together with the elders in the community, get some of this history coming out and coming alive. It was a lot of fun. And that was all through Oral Humanities Council grant. Okay. Here, I've got a link to the transcripts of those oral histories that were over the summer. And pretty soon the audio will be there too. We just had to work out some technical things. And clearly, I am not the one to figure out anything technical. So I've got some folks at the library that are helping me work on that. But we do have the transcripts on here. And actually, I can probably play this one. We've got one up there. Nope, can't do it.
Oh, Kelly, see, yeah, see that.
Nope. Where did that young man go?
Right here.
It looks
Oh,
like
that's-
I've got the computer sound turned on.
Oh, okay, let's try it again. Is it just? Well, from your personal computers or phones at home, you can. Oh, wait.
Okay. Next question.
This is a young lady interviewing
Next
her
question.
grandfather.
What's your fondest memory of living here?
two, is it okay? Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. It was quite a few things that was fun to
Just say one.
living here. So
Fun with the grandkids.
I guess going to school at Douglas High School, all black school.
So how, like, tell me about it.
Tell me about it. Well,
There's no right or wrong way.
it was great. I liked it because we had everything of our own. And it was great. It was just great. The segregation was nice, but the black kids that went to the white schools, they didn't get to do as much as we did. We had our own thing for ourselves, own clubs, own everything. But in mixed schools, I don't think it's like that. I don't know. And the fondest memories are going to Douglas High School and graduating.
Okay. I mean, I've got hours and hours and stuff, so probably we won't spend that much time. But they will be on here soon, and you can listen to the rest of Mr. Woolfolk's. It's interesting, I'm glad that that one came, that was the one that was there, because I did hear from a lot of people, my uncle included, how much Douglas meant to them. And how my uncle told, no, it was David Harris, told a story about there was a kid that lived across the street, a white kid. Dave Harris would go to Douglas every day. He'd, see this kid across the street, and the kid would say, why can't I go to school there? My friends go to school there, it's right here, but I have to go clear down, to Kamak or wherever he ended up, he had to go, or Huntington High.
Where was Douglas High School?
The building's still there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's right off of 16th Street, and it's on 10th, yeah.
10th
Uh-huh.
Avenue?
Marshall owns it now, Marshall Health is in there. Ebenezer Medical Outreach was in there, I'm not sure if it still is.
It still is.
Ebenezer's
Still there. And they have a dental clinic as well.
Mhm. So, apparently, the auditorium is still there, and there's a mural there, so I'm trying to get in to see this mural. It's still there. There was a piano there for a while. There's a woman named Ravella Hughes, who's from Huntington. She was the music teacher at Douglas High School. She was my uncle's music teacher. Then she went off to New York City and was on Broadway and did a bunch of exciting things. So that the piano that she used was there for a long time, and then somehow I think it got sold. So if anybody, I don't know where that piano came from. It might be hers. So, yeah. And the other, this is kind of cool too, because it's great to have the oral recordings, but it's great to have the artifacts too. So like the photos, I'm currently on the hunt for Douglas High yearbooks. My uncle, luckily he's a little bit of a hoarder. He was in the band at Douglas. He said, oh yeah, the drum's still upstairs. So he's had this drum for, what, 80 years? So who knows what it looks like. And something else, like maybe a sash or something from when he was in the Douglas High band. So, pretty cool.
Do they still have their reunions?
Mhm.
What is it, every 5? How often do they have them? Because it was always, it used to be a really big deal, and it was always in the paper, but I don't recall seeing it in recent past, as it being such a big deal, because it was a big deal.
And again, not being from here, I'm still, I've only lived in Huntington a couple of years. I lived in Ohio, in Proctorville, for quite some time. So I still am getting to know all the people and all the players and everything. My understanding is that they're in conjunction with, well, not in conjunction, at the same time as Huntington High, because there's some overlap, plus a lot of the people that went to Douglas aren't with us anymore. So they do something, Huntington High has like a weekend, big weekend, and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
maybe Friday night, or there's some, a Douglas reunion thing.
When did the school close?
Oh gosh, I know this must be too quick. Dave Harris, I think, said he was the last graduating class, so that must have been in the early, was it 1960? I'm trying to remember. I want to say early 60s, maybe 1960, I'm not sure. And interestingly, my family, I had family in Huntington, but also family in Proctorville, Ohio. Their high school was not segregated. So my family in Ohio, I mean, everybody went to school together, but over here it was different. So, any other questions?
Oh, Kelly, according to Wikipedia,
Thank you.
on my Google machine, Douglas closed in 1961.
61.
Okay, you were right there.
I was close.
Yeah. Hmm.
So where was the old Huntington High School? Because I know Huntington High School is fairly new up on that hill, right?
Yeah, there's one that they use as an arts center, and it's on 8th Street and 9th Avenue. And then there was the one downtown.
Right.
Yeah, that's the school board, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
That was all
Right over close to the
Huntington
line.
East.
Right.
So Kelly, have
You
you
guys
ever
know
gone
way
to
more than
to the Douglas reunion to talk about yearbooks, to talk about memorabilia? Because they used to have all of that out. They used to have yearbooks out for the reunion and pennants. They used to have a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get to dive in a lot more. So far, it's a little embarrassing because I'm a librarian and I should be way more organized. So I'm on sabbatical this semester. This is a long story to answer your question. So January 1, or well, not January 1, so we'll say January 3rd. I should have, jumped right in and got started. I realized how many other things that I do. So I haven't gotten as far along in the project as I want to. My main sources right now, David Harris, I've done several interviews with him. We actually went on a little driving tour, which I'm going to try and recreate with video next time because it's cool. That was the pharmacy, and that was, this and that. Ooh, which reminds me, I have a spicy story to tell.
And are you doing it are you doing this with putting these things in Clio, or are you working with David on?
Yeah, David Trowbridge got another grant to do some improvements, I guess, on Clio. Does everybody know what Clio is, the Clio app?
He presented last year.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll let you know.
But not everybody was here.
Clio is an app, free app that you can download, and it basically tells you the history where you are. So if we open it up right now, it would talk about anything historical that somebody has put an entry in. It's kind of like
How do you spell Clio? C-L-E-O?
CLIO, and it's the Clio. If you just type in Clio, it takes you to something else. It's the Clio, and you can get to it through the app or on your computer through the
You can
website.
download it to your phone.
Yes, yeah. So he's doing some upgrades to it, and he hopes to use snippets from some of these oral histories to accentuate some of the entries. So.
Are Marshall students involved? You said the high school students were the ones this past summer.
The high school students are the one I got the grant from the
Oh, okay.
Humanities Council over the summer. I'm working with Jennifer Sias, who is a journalism professor.
Yeah.
She does, she teaches her students, but she's very passionate about oral histories as well. So we're going to be working together this fall to get some additional oral histories collected. So her students will be doing them. So that'll be pretty exciting too. That'll be cool. Get them out in the neighborhood and talking to people.
Are you located in the library?
Yeah, my office is in Drinko Library. Mm-hmm.
Where in Drinko?
I am on the 3rd floor, but I won't be in there till July 1st since I'm on sabbatical. Usually you find me at home on my computer in my sweatpants. Or out in the community in my sweatpants. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm on the 3rd floor I'm in Jinping's old office, so 3rd floor in technical cert, yeah. I have a big giant window, it's really nice, so, but yeah. It's easiest to get a hold of me through email since I'm constantly here and there.
back to that spicy story
Yeah,
you were
spicy.
gonna tell us.
So Dave Harris, who, he would be a great person to, I mean, because he has so many stories. So when Dave was a kid, he was 16, he had a job working for one of the pharmacies. And I apologize if any of this has to do with anybody's family, I apologize in advance. So he worked for a pharmacy, and the guy that owned the pharmacy he was a white guy, he was married, had a family, and he lived right there in the neighborhood. So Dave's job would be to pick up prescriptions and stuff and pedal his bike around and deliver them. And so one day he goes into work, and some people come and ask, and they're like, where's I can't remember the pharmacist's name.
Bun drugstore, probably.
Pardon?
Buns,
But it might have been Buns.
right there on the corner of Charleston Avenue and 16th.
In 16th Street, that's it. Do you know the story? Do you know where I'm
No,
going with
I
this?
don't.
Oh, okay. So they asked about the guy's whereabouts, Mr. Bunn's whereabouts, and everybody's like, well, that's kind of weird. Not really sure what's going on. Turns out that Mr. Bunn was a married man, maybe not so happily because he did have a girlfriend in the neighborhood, and they had found the girlfriend murdered in one of the, I told you it was spicy, in one of the many drinking establishments that were on 8th Avenue there. And, but they also found a man in the drinking establishment too, passed out drunk with a knife in his hand. Yeah, kind of weird. But Mr. Bunn had been at home with his family, or no, Mr. Bunn had not been at home with his family, but this other man ended up going to prison for what happened to Mr. Bunn's girlfriend. Apparently somebody might be working on a book on that story, because there's apparently a lot more juiciness that goes into it. That's the only part of the story that I heard. But Dave Harris said Mr. Bunn was the nicest guy. He loved working for him.
Was the man who went to prison white or black?
Black.
Oh,
And the girlfriend was black.
okay.
This is probably 15, maybe more than 15 years ago. But Dan Holbrook, who's professor in the history department, he had his class, they were doing research projects about Huntington. And they were doing it when they were first experimenting with technology, and particularly to do PowerPoints and things like this. And they all gave their presentations at the end of the semester down at the Frederick there in but one student did their research project on businesses, black businesses in the black community in the Fairfield community. And it was fascinating. They had information, they had pictures, they had maps, and they had put the businesses, and they had talked to people then. So you might want to ask Dan if he still has any of that information.
I will. Now I'm going to pick with Dan because he helped out with the humanities grant. He didn't mention a word about that. But I have been able to find.
We may not have the students' work, but the but other people I think have used that as well, since that student did that research project. But it was fascinating because they'd actually done a map and they had identified the businesses on the map, and then they tried to link what information they had about those businesses.
Well, I'm going to try and track that down. And another thing that I've used is the Green Book. So the movie's out now, the Negro Motors Green Book. So I've been able to get copies of that. And some of those buildings are still standing, some of those places. One is a little motel that's right off 9th Avenue. So, pretty cool. Yeah, thank you.
I have a book called Black Wall Street. It's written about the black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was very prosperous and the building was burned.
Yeah.
And, but I think it's a wonderful model for reportage of the growth of the community. It didn't seem to leave any sort of stones unturned in terms of looking at the dynamics of the black community. I heard the guy speak.
Sounds cool. I have to look into that. I think that I'm really looking forward to Cicero's book because I kind of joke around. He's the scholar, so his is going to be. I mean, his dissertation, his thesis are wonderful. Wealth of information, and his book I'm sure is going to be the same way. What I'm looking for is what Sandra and Dolores, because I'm trying to stay true to their vision, something more along a coffee table book, something like that, or you have an illustrious resident here at the Woodlands, Jim Casto. He and I've chatted, so the book hopefully will look a little bit more like something like that.
I've often described it to friends as the northernmost point in the South,
Yeah.
the southernmost point in the westernmost part of the Atlantic coast, and the easternmost part of the Midwest. And if you agree with that dynamic, do you see that in the black community, or is it reflected in the experiences of the black community?
Yeah.
Tom, we can't hear you, so can you
Could you
talk
stand up?
I wasn't talking to you.
Well, I'm not gonna.
As reluctant as I am to become the center of
I'm loud, you're not loud. No, he's not doing it.
I have often characterized Huntington as the northernmost point in the South, the southernmost point in the north, the westernmost part of the mid-Atlantic, and the easternmost point of the Midwest. And I'm wondering if the experiences have been gathered in the black community here. I mean, that's just my, there's no scholarship in that. That's just my observation. You see some very southern things here. You see some Midwest practicality here that sometimes overwhelms that. So it's just a cultural comment. And I wondered if the experience of the black community represents the same kind of amalgamation of the experience in the slave states, the Deep South, and the influence of the Mid-Atlantic and the hinterland of Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati of the Midwest. I had a professor in some class I flunked.
You can audit it now for $50.
Kelly, I'll get your money from the bursar.
That talked about the Ohio River, and he said there are two significant, that connects two significant points. Pittsburgh, which is of course the paradigm for the northern industrial sort of thing, and New Orleans at the other end, which gives river towns and cities a distinctly sort of a southern thing, and with the influence of the railroad here and the ties to Roanoke and Richmond, it's just seemed like a nexus to me of those kinds of cultural places. I'm going to sit down now.
Okay, wait a minute. What I would say, I mean, digging into the history, and again, I'm not a historian. Coming from someplace else, I just never thought about West Virginia. Now, I did know it was separate from Virginia. I don't get that. I just don't understand. That's just,
A lot of people don't.
I just don't get, I mean, wow, we are bad at geography in the US. But anyway, but I never really knew the history. So digging into it, I mean, we were just primed to be different, just starting from the history. So I think that set us on the course to be what we are today, which is this odd amalgamation of all of those things that you were talking about. And I do think it was reflected in Black history as well. I think it was interesting that a lot of African Americans came to Huntington for a better life a long time ago because of the railroad. There was an opportunity there to the southern coal fields because there was an opportunity there. And so I think, and a lot of folks came from the southern coal fields here. So that informed the Black community here. They were quite used to, from very early on, to a Black middle class here. And that wasn't necessarily the case in all places. I can't probably give you a very great answer on that, but I do see that the history of the making of West Virginia and the opportunities, even though it was a southern state, the opportunities that were available here. Did it work out for everybody? No. God, no. It sure didn't. But there were opportunities here, I think, that drew Black people to Huntington. and see a lot of those things reflected here.
Well, the underground railroad under the river.
Mhm. Yeah.
Across to Burlington and wherever that is.
Cerrito.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm related to the Burlington 37. That's my ancestors somehow. That's my dad's thing. He can come talk about that. I haven't done the genealogy in the family. It's my dad. So. But yeah, it's, again, Cicero could give you a better scholarly, wonderful answer. As a librarian, it's just important to me to collect all these things. I don't necessarily interpret, if that makes sense. So.
Have you had any surprises in doing this project? Things that you didn't expect or information that's surprising?
I think that I came to it, and this kind of goes along with what you were saying too. In my mind, West Virginia was a southern state with southern values before I moved here. So it was, you know, when I did come to the area, I realized how different. West Virginia, it's just like an onion. There's these weird layers, and I just don't, you know, when you think it's one way, it's a different way. So I think that what was surprising to me as I started peeling this back is that I thought that there would be a lot more animosity in the stories. A lot more of older black people saying, we were treated terribly, and you know, it was terrible. That's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that it was a wonderful life in Fairfield. There were places you didn't go. Oh well, we'll make our own place in our neighborhood, you know? So it was, I think that was the most interesting to me, unless I just haven't heard those stories yet, you know? But I thought it would be a lot, kind of a harsher history. Does that make sense? So, I also, it's interesting because working on the history of African Americans in a town, but I've had so much interest from white people, which is awesome. I mean, because it's all our town, you know? And I think that's really cool too. So I'll have people stop me, women stop me at the grocery store. She's like, I can tell you some stories. You want to talk to me? I can tell you some stories. And I was like, okay, give me a go. You know? So, I mean, everybody has a story to share, and that's really amazing too. I thought it might be hard to get people to talk to me. One thing I find though, our seniors in this area are super busy. So I try to talk to somebody, and they're like, Wendy Thomas, who's an educator and a wonderful, wonderful human being. So she and I have been trying to talk forever, and she said, well, you got to get me in a couple weeks, after February, maybe sometime in March. I don't know, I'm really busy. This project's going to go on forever, which is great, but I mean, people are really busy too, so, which is a good problem to have, you know, a bunch of busy people.
What about the future? I know we were talking about the past, but what about the future of Fairfield? Because I've driven through some of the parts, and like Ninth Avenue I use all the time, and there's some great places and then some run-down places, but the pharmacy school is going there, and apartments, and are we going to build a supermarket there? I mean, they really need, that area really could use a store.
We have a really cool thing happening right now that I didn't think I'd see in this area. So there are some pillars in our community. There's the city, there's Marshall University, and there's Cabell Huntington Hospital, right? So those are the biggies. At this time, we have 3 people, all happen to be white men, but that's okay. 3 people heading those entities who want to push not only Huntington forward, but really Fairfield forward. So you might have heard about the ABC, America's Best Communities grant, which everybody got a good laugh over. Yeah.
All the
Best community, yeah. But I mean, that just was a bunch of money, don't ask me how much. Yeah, it was a lot, yeah. to formulate plans to move Huntington forward. And one of those pieces is Fairfield. There's a group called the Fairfield Alliance, which I'm involved with, and so it's looking at a grocery store. That's something that everybody wants and knows we need. What form it's going to take, who knows. I anticipate within the next few years something will be there so that people have a place to grocery shop. There's also a piece that's working on Calgary Boulevard itself, so making it better, because it's kind of a mess if you drive through there. There's a couple times when you have to turn and you gotta wait, and you're in the middle of the road and the lights and the people. There's no street lights and you can't see, it's pitch dark. People are playing Frogger to get across the street, so that's a plan that's full steam ahead. It looks really, really good. I think that those people will be back pretty soon to talk about redoing the street.
Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at the West End Library, the Black Women, the sorority,
Oh, yeah.
and the League of Women Voters are sponsoring a meeting. Sandra Clements is going to review the Fairfield plans.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Thank you.
Where is this,
10
Martha?
o'clock on Saturday morning at the West End Library. They're on
14th Street West.
Yeah,
14th Street
yeah,
West.
across from the shopping center there. And it's a co-production, and Sandy's gonna talk about
At 10?
10 o'clock.
10.
Yeah, Sandra Clements has been very, very instrumental. She is a powerhouse. A powerhouse. She will be a young 70 this year, and there's no stopping her. So, yeah, we're really, really lucky to have. She was a city council person. She was a Marshall employee. She's retired, and she's doing that. She and Sean Hornbuckle, who's our representative, are the initial co-directors of a community development corporation that we're starting in the neighborhood, so Fairfield Development Corporation. So that's moving forward. There's a lot of big plans, and differently than I think people have experienced in the past, I think something will come of these plans. It's not just a bunch of talking. So that's the exciting part of it. Another thing that I'm doing is helping to document that whole process. So gathering together materials and artifacts from this whole process of moving Fairfield forward. So, yeah.
The thing that concerns me is you can look around the room and we're not very diverse. We're not integrated. And I go out in public, and other than Marshall University, you don't see the integration. And that bothers me, that everything that I'm involved in is that everyone looks like me.
You know,
And how do you do that, and how does that happen? I had attended a couple of years ago when they did Together We Rise, and I had attended that, and I thought it was really good to get people talking, but then I don't know what happened. And so, and there, I met people that, and I made a point to sit with a table that didn't look like me. And it was really nice. And you hear their stories about going from Douglas to Huntington High, and on a personal level. And it was really interesting to see what they went through, because that was not my history, but I think that we all live in this world together.
And I appreciate what you said, because you went out of your way to go to a table full of people you didn't know and that didn't look like you. You didn't see you looking back at you. And I think that we need more of that. It's kind of one of those things, though, where the people that want to do things are constantly doing things, but a lot of people are kind of more apathetic and they're fine with the way things are. So I think that there's some of us who are really trying to push the envelope. Well, I'm bored hit now. Maybe you set the bar too high.
He has a lunch meeting. You're talking about the busy people. These are some busy people, let me tell you.
But I'm glad you mentioned those because the woman who was in charge of United Way, who I think is the one that got it together, she left and went someplace else.
She did, and I think also Dante, who was the pastor of the First
He left,
Baptist
yeah.
Church, he left also, and they were really into that. I think
Mitzi was a part of it.
Yeah.
It goes back to the people who wanted to do these things are very, very busy. I'll tell you too that even though I said I was surprised that there wasn't more animosity in some of these stories, there are still some people in the neighborhood who are very, very angry about the neighborhood and what's happened to it. And I think that we need to take some responsibility for that ourselves, but it also is things that happen on a citywide level, or that kind of brought us down a little bit. We still, I heard stories when I first got here at Marshall, and people say, don't go under the viaduct, don't go over there, it's dangerous, you're gonna get killed. Everybody's under it, And I thought, okay, that happened way back then. It still happens now. So we have people who are actively saying, basically, it's a bunch of scary black people over there, probably don't go over there. And again, not a psychologist, not a historian, just my personal opinion. I mean, there's some animosity there, thinking back years, and that you didn't want, not you, not you guys, but people from Marshall, which is a huge thing. I mean, people in Fairfield love Marshall. They love Marshall football games. But to know that students there are being told not to come over, it's heartbreaking, Something that you love is telling people don't like you. It's rough. So that was a long story that probably didn't answer your question, but I think it's just pushing the boundaries. As we were talking, I was thinking, there's a senior center in Fairfield, Marie Red Center. It's a lovely center. That's where we did our kickoff and our final thing for the oral histories over the summer. It might be a fun thing to go there and see some people that you don't know, you've not met before. Play cards. My uncle goes, he goes 3 days a week because one day they do something that he doesn't like, but he goes and plays cards. He goes and plays cards, so I mean, if anybody's into cards, maybe go over and play cards with some people you don't know.
We have other events there. I've been to just.
Oh, yeah.
Marie Red.
It's a great center, yeah. And the woman that runs it is a hoot. She's funny. So, Adrian, a hoot. So, I don't know if that answers your question, probably. But the conversations that we're having here, the woman that ran up to me in the grocery store and said, I've got stories. She lived on the, I think she lived on Golden for a while. She was part of the neighborhood. I want her story.
So Kelly, what do you have to get done during your sabbatical?
Well, I have to write a book. I've been talking with, if you're familiar with Jim Casto's books, he works with a couple different presses, but the one I'm working with now is the History Press. And basically, it's really going to be a small coffee table book because I want to make sure that I can save as much of the history as I can. So there'll be some pictures and some words and hopefully some direct quotes from some of these oral histories. So what I'll be working on for the next few months, and probably on past that, collecting oral histories, collecting artifacts of pictures and things like that, and putting together this book and working with the History Press. Another thing that I'm trying to do is, I'm a librarian, I've said it a million times, so you probably know now, but working with our special collections department to not only save the oral histories, so we have the recordings and the transcripts, but save those artifacts too. So you guys know Hal Greer passed away recently. They're working on a documentary, so the people from the documentary contacted me to see if I had any Douglas yearbooks. I don't, but I put the feelers out, who's got Douglas yearbooks. And then I want to make sure that when some of these older folks pass away, their kids don't go, we don't need this yearbook. I want to save those things. So those are the things I'm working on. Trying to put together this more or less pictorial history of Fairfield and to save that history, whether it's oral histories or artifacts or all of the above, hopefully. That's what I'll be doing for the next several months. Until, well, forever, probably. Forever. I went to talk to my uncle. I told you he's 95. So the first time we talked for about an hour and a half, and we just got up to where he got out of the service right after World War II. So then I talked to him the other day, and we got pretty much through his life. But, I mean, I need to go back and record several more hours. There's so much exciting stuff. He told me a story about, so he was in a segregated unit in World War II, and he was like, thank goodness, I'm so happy to be black. I didn't have to go, shoot people. They were still in combat, but he wasn't on the front line. He was a truck driver and truck mechanic. But he said when they got to France, they got to Utah Beach, and they went up this, went out into this field, and they were like, just go to sleep there. He said, he didn't have a sleeping bag or anything like that. Just go to sleep in that field. So here's this kid, 18, Huntington, West Virginia, never been out of Huntington, West Virginia, and now he's over in, World War II, and he's laying in the middle of this field. He probably never slept outside, but I mean, he's kind of a fancy guy. If you've ever met my uncle, I don't see him sleeping outside. He said he kept hearing noises all night long, just freaked out, couldn't sleep. So, just shivering, 18, scared. He wakes up in the morning, there's a horse roaming around in the field. That's what he was scared of, the horse. So, those are the kind of stories that you can't, I can't make that up. Well, I guess I could have, but I didn't. I was like, it was fun to hear from him. He had quite a few interesting stories. And he got really into it and kind of let slip some of the, his true feelings about some of his friends, so that was kind of cool. I might need to take those out. Well, they're not, but their kids are. So, yeah, I just won't post them for now. Yeah. So yeah, that's my life for the foreseeable future. Any other questions? Talk to each other and record those histories. Beth's going to talk to you about apps on the phone. I can I can give you lists of questions to ask, but I'm sure that you don't need any nudging at all. And if you do want to start collecting oral histories and you want to have them preserved, let me know, and we'll try and get them someplace on a Marshall University server, it's apparently what it's called, and save those things so that people can take a look at them in the future and take a listen. So, thank you guys.